Welcome to HSC. Hey, thanks for joining us for this video. I'm going to make it lots of fun. We're going to cover a lot of information. This is all about picking the best drone for the job. Now, there's obviously a lot that goes into that question, and we're going to cover a lot of different facets about it. If you have questions, always check out our website, hsc-uav.com. Give us a call, talk to one of our experts. And of course, we've got a lot of other great videos here on YouTube. All right, so let's jump into this. First thing I want to walk through is there's something really unique about HSC, which is that we sell all of the best brands. So unlike a lot of folks out there that just sell one brand and are, really working, obviously it's their job to sell aircraft, and maybe there's some aspect of this drone is the best at everything. It's not really the case. All products, all technology, all hardware, all manufacturers have things that they excel at and things that they fall short on. So we're going to talk about those differences today and why our business model is super different, which is about us finding the right tool for your job. All right, let's jump in. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is what is the application? Most important job. So you think about a drone, yeah, of course it's got to fly, it's got to work well, but more importantly, it's got to be an expert at applying either the spray, if you're in a liquid application, or the dry granule fertilizer, seeds, etc., if it's a dry application. Then we're going to talk about where is the application? What's the environment like? What's the terrain like? What's your access to that environment, and why does that matter? Then we're going to talk about the most important aspect is achieving the application, effectiveness, and the productivity of that application. Look, I don't care how cool the drone is. I don't care how cool the technology is. If it doesn't get the job done as an expert applicator, then who cares, right? At the end of the day, that's what really, really, really matters. So that's what we're focused on. And I know sometimes people are like, I really like that drone because of X, Y, or Z. It's like, look, we've got to really deal with having it be the most productive and the most efficacious. Those are the things. And then other considerations too, we'll jump into all that. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is budget. That, of course, has to play into it, right? There's a lot of different tiers of pricing on these aircraft. Some of them range down to the 10,000-ish, and you can get all the way up into the $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. Obviously, that's, it's a value proposition about how much does that product cost and how much does it save you? What's your return on investment or your ROI? Does it save you in, time? Of course, labor. Are you able to more effectively get to places you couldn't before? Can you now spot spray and save on chem costs? All those things. Then what's the current stock? The technology is going to continue changing. It really will. And by the time you get an aircraft, within 6 months, there's going to be something new on the market. Don't stress, don't sweat about that. That's just the nature of the beast. So just jump in. The technology out right now is so extraordinary. Kind of like smartphones, we're now starting to see very small incremental differences between hardware. All of them are fabulously safe, super efficient, really robustly well made. A lot of that quality stuff that was present as problems back in the day has all worked itself out. So no matter what you choose, you're going to be in good shape. Also, who to buy from. So one of the things I'm most proud about from our team is that we give really unbiased guidance. We've got no dog in the fight, so to say, when it comes to shoving a certain platform down your throat, like this is the win all be all. We've got no dog in that fight. So you'll always get unbiased, honest, expert guidance from our team. We also try to make the whole thing easy for customers by offering FAA consulting and guidance, leasing, financing. We always recommend having spare parts on hand. So when you do need to replace something, because you will, you're not going to have to worry about your supplier being out of parts or paying extra for overnighting orders, etc. Okay, so always have spare parts. Also, training is critical. About 82% of our support cases come from customers that never took our training. So don't skip out on training. It will cost you in the long haul, okay? And then how to pay for it. Leasing, financing, talk to your tax advisor or your accountant about the perks about the financing equipment like this. Also, obviously helps with cash flow. I'm a big fan of that. All right, next, we're going to talk again about the application. Okay, so why does this matter? Because it really seems like all the drones are more or less the same. 6 rotors, 8 rotors, 4 rotors, 2 rotors, nozzles out on a boom, nozzles under rotor. Some have a combination of both. Why does that matter? So in short, all spraying drones are pretty dang good at herbicide applications. They're all really good. Most of them were designed for that. Okay. Herbicide applications are very, very different. And the reason they're all good is because most herbicides go down at about 1 to 3 gallons of total liquid volume per acre. Okay. You might think about that as like a solution, total solution. That's your active ingredient, also known as your AI, your actual active product, mixed with the amount of carrier, whether it be water or some other carrier. Your total of those two combined, or your mixed solution, your total liquid volume, all interchangeable terms, is usually about 1 to 3 gallons per acre. I'm going to talk a little bit more about application rates and why that matters too. So those are really ideal. Why? Because aircraft drones right now have pretty small tanks in comparison to some other, existing methods. So 1 to 3 gallons per acre is really efficient. They're all going to fly really well. Most of those herbicides are systemic, meaning you just have to get a couple drops on the actual target to kill it, okay, to effectively mitigate weeds or control unwanted weeds. That's the good thing about herbicides. Other products like fungicides, insecticides, or contact-based products, okay, mean that the chemical has to fully saturate and be thorough throughout that crop or whatever the target is to be efficacious. So if a fungicide, and you only get a couple drops on the say a grapevine, we'll talk a little bit more about this. That's not going to kill it. You've got to actually get the fungicide onto the fungus. Okay, or if it's an insecticide or a miticide, it has to be where the actual insect or the pest or the mite is. Very different. So those require a lot more volume, which means a larger aircraft is almost always ideal, but we also have to deal with canopy penetration, which is a whole nother ballgame, and we're going to talk about that too. Then dry seeding and fertilizing, okay? Dry seeding and fertilizing is also pretty good across all of these different products nowadays. They're all pretty solid at that. Mostly you're going to depend on how much you can control that seeding and how far that seed spreads, okay? So I want to talk about volumes. This is a really important part, and it's a big question that we get. So generally, depending on where you're coming from, if you're coming from an existing aerial application, this makes sense to you. If you're coming from a backpack, or especially a tractor, air blast, or something similar, there's a lot to learn here, okay? I'll try to keep it short and also valuable for you. All right, so the first thing to think about is when you're talking about total liquid volume, generally speaking, you're always, not generally, always, you're going to talk about the label is the law. You're going to go by what the label says. Okay, generally speaking, when you look at the ground application part of the chemical label, the AI label, it's going to give you a certain amount of total liquid volume or total mix solution that goes out per acre. It's also going to show you what your AI is, how much of that active ingredient goes into that mix. Then you look at the aerial label, a lot of times that active ingredient, not all times, is going to be the same amount, but the amount of water or carrier you're using is going to be way less. Why? Good question. We're going to cover that. But I want you to think first that no matter how much water or carrier is going out, I'm putting out the same amount of active ingredient over the same area. Okay, so whether it's 10 ounces or 2 ounces or a gallon, whatever it is, the same amount is going out over the same area. Okay, now why do I put more water in when I'm on a ground rig versus an aerial application? Because ground vehicles have to move slower. They just travel slower. The tractor or whatever you're pulling, a side by side, can only travel so fast, safely and effectively. Okay, where an aircraft, because it's not limited to what's happening on the ground, can move much faster, which means that chemical doesn't have to be as watered down because it's not limited to its travel speed. So that's the big difference. Now, I know still, especially in contact-based applications, fungicides and insecticides, a lot of folks are a little nervous to go from 20 gallons an acre down to 5 gallons an acre like the label says. I get it. I totally get it. It's a valid concern. And the point is, you're going to have to just test it out in your application. But do remember that the chemical manufacturer, the registrant, made that label. But what's their priority? Their priority is efficacious applications. It's efficacy. That's their main. They're not going to put a bad label on a product that's not going to be efficacious because that's bad for their business. And they also want you to use as much of the chemical that's appropriate to manage the pest. Also helps to prevent herbicide resistance, et cetera. There's a lot of things like that go into that. Okay. So I get it. Do the research, do your checking. You've got to calibrate. If the label allows you to start in at 10 gallons an acre instead of 5, start there. And then you can dial it back and watch your ability to control that pest. Okay. So just, that's a big part of it. Okay. Now going back to why these are so different, we're going to talk about differences in platforms. Okay. I'm also going to mention this piece about soft washing. So soft washing, if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to just tap on this part real quick. Soft washing is the process of using a liquid to clean or treat a surface. So think about roofs that have mold or mildew on them. Soft washing is a process of essentially spraying that with a cleaning agent. That cleaning agent breaks down whatever the dirt or the material or the debris or the organic matter is, and then it rinses off. Okay. People are now using spraying drones, to perform soft washing. The problem there is that it requires such a high amount of water or volume that drones are generally pretty useless. But if you came to me and said, hey, Brian, I've got this soft washing, I'm looking at doing a rooficide or cleaning solar panels, maybe I'm cleaning greenhouses or shading greenhouses, then I would say, okay, let's look at a tethered system. That's a drone, provides the actual flying of the nozzles. So it's getting your nozzles up to the location on the roof or whatever it is, instead of having a person in harm's way, which I love, getting that out of the way, I should say. And then it's ran to the ground with a ground tank, whether that's 100 gallons or 200 gallons or whatever, with a pump on the ground. So now all you're doing is carrying a hose up to the top of that roof or above those solar panels, and then you're using that aircraft to spray that to do the actual soft washing. Really awesome solution. Okay, now we're going to get into the differences of platforms to be the right tool for the job. So we talked about herbicides. Again, I'm a big fan of pretty much every platform is good for herbicides, generally speaking. Now I'm going to show you the differences between why platforms make a big difference depending on your application. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a video. Now, forgive me in advance because I know the quality of this, how it all gets recorded, isn't ideal, but you'll still get the gist of it. Also, it's a bummer because the background of this video is pretty bright, so the contrast of the spray coming down is kind of hard to see. But if you look closely, you will see it. Okay, this first platform is your typical. It's an aircraft we used to sell. We don't offer these anymore for a variety of reasons, but it's a typical, I think this is a Hex. I'm trying to count. Yeah, this is a Hex model. And it's got standard off-the-shelf nozzles. I think the flow rate on this guy is about 1.5 gallons per minute. It might be a little less than that. And we're using a fine nozzle size. This is a test application over a vineyard for a fungicide application. So we're at about 100 microns on the droplet size. And what we did is we went out and placed water-sensitive papers or litmus papers in 3 different places on this vine. We placed it at the top, which is generally pretty easy for all drones to get to because they've got the downward thrust. Coverage on the top, again, we're mimicking a fungicide application. Coverage on top is pretty easy to get to. Then we had to get into where the clusters were, which is way more difficult to treat by any method. So you'll see 2 different litmus papers, one at a cluster that's towards the kind of middle top section and one towards the bottom. Now, the tool for the job matters because we're going to see how effective this drone was at this application. Now, we're not even dealing with, at this scenario, about the tank size or about the quickness of refilling, et cetera. We're going to talk about that a little later in this video. But here's the video, okay? Let's see here. Play. Just kidding. Play. Oh, I think I had to hit space. Sorry, hang tight. You'll be able to just barely see the blue. There's a food dye in that tank that allowed us to have some good contrast. So you could tell not much disruption in the foliage there in that canopy, but it flew decently well. Terrain following was on in this test. Generally, once a field is really permanently mapped out, you'd turn that off. Also, depending on the aircraft and depending on the application and depending on the crop, you're going to fly higher or lower. We talk about all that stuff in training. I want to show you the litmus paper that was towards the top. Pretty decent here. Nice even coverage there on the kind of on the outside where you can tell it had more exposure to the surface. Towards the right hand side of that card, you can tell it's a little less. There's a little less coverage. That really tells us that that particular aircraft didn't do a great job at canopy penetration for that spray. I'm going to show you the cluster. This is the cluster towards the bottom. Yeah, you've got some drops, nice pattern uniformity as far as the droplet sizes goes, not a lot of coverage, okay? If I owned this vineyard, if I was this vineyard manager, I probably wouldn't go with this because I don't think that that's sufficient. Check this out. This is a little higher towards the top, also near a cluster. Our hand right now is out of screenshot, but we're holding the leaf up so you can see. I really like that pattern in the sense of a really good fine droplet size there. That looks pretty solid. This, by the way, is a critical thing to do whenever you buy a spraying drone. You got to get out and test it in your field, in your farm, in your application, so you can see how the aircraft performs. Then you'll make changes and tweaks. Again, we go through all this in our training, but yeah, some really good stuff. Okay, now I'm going to show you a totally different aircraft that was built for vineyards and orchards, and its whole design philosophy is about canopy penetration. I'm going to show you. Now, again, same kind of background. I've got two other videos I'm going to show you also that show the same exact drones in a different application where you can see a bit more of the spray. All right, here we go. Okay. You can already tell from that blue a lot more down thrust, a lot more product moving out, a lot more spray coming out. This aircraft flies a lot higher for a couple reasons. Okay, so there's that one. Now I'm going to show you the difference in those litmus cards. This is the top litmus card towards the top of the vine there. Really, really, really good coverage. That you can also see that one leaf, we kind of have it tucked underneath that wire. That leaf was actually over this. Anytime I'm out doing research or spray studies, I always like to put these cards in the hardest places because that's what we need to know, right? We need to know if it can perform in the hard places, we know it can perform in the good place, the easy places. Here's the cluster. Check that out. Now, these droplets are a little larger. However, we had that configured. That might have been 120 microns. That's all part of the study. I can't remember what they were, but a little larger droplet size. Super fabulous coverage. You can see the top leaf in the picture here was actually, we're holding up out of the way so we could see this litmus card. So big difference, right? This is the tool for the job. I would be super thrilled if I owned even that far back left corner behind the cluster. You can just barely see it. You can even see droplets there behind all of that. So this drone, even as high as it was super effective at getting the spray into the canopy where the target pests were. Now, I'm going to show you, this is more just for your visual knowledge, the difference of these two platforms in a cherry orchard, okay? Now, mostly I'm just showing you how the difference of spray pattern works, okay? So first one here, there we go. Now on the second one, we got a bit of a crosswind, so we had to deal with that. But you can tell all of that turbulence on the ground is pretty notable. So big difference in those two aircraft, right? Again, if you were spraying a herbicide, these would actually show really well together. Now, if you came to me and said, hey, Brian, I've got this herbicide application, I probably wouldn't recommend that aircraft on the right. Why? Because it's kind of overkill. Even though you've got adjustable droplet sizes and can slow that flow way down, it might be a little overkill. You also could probably get one that's a little less expensive than that. But this drone obviously is really built for penetration, canopy penetration, and high volume, high application rates. Again, all about the right tool for the job. All right, now let's move on. Where is the application? This is also a big deal. So Why does that matter? Well, because different aircraft are going to excel in different environments, and some shortcomings of certain platforms will be really, really, really a pain in your butt, depending on the environment. So we're first going to talk about what's the target pest, or what's the thing you're trying to mitigate or manage. So if is an aerial application the best, or is it a ground application like this ground rover that you see up here? When we think about the difference between aerial and ground, we're going to be asking you questions like, okay, well, how much of this product needs to get to the underside of leaves? How dense is that canopy? What's the axis on the ground? Oh, it's a rice field. Okay, I'm not going to recommend a ground rover for spraying rice, right? What about invasive aquatics? Not a ground rover. What about an orchard? Banana? Okay, might be better. A vining crop, tomatoes, melon, squash, etc. Not going to recommend a rover. So it all is going to depend, but they both have beautiful places that they serve. Again, talking about canopy, what about the terrain? Okay, now terrain's a really big deal. The higher end product lines that have more sophisticated technologies, more sophisticated radar, more sophisticated abilities are going to deal a lot better with really steep, difficult terrain. Okay, some of your lower end products aren't going to have a sophisticated instrumentation, if you will, and might end up flying into a hillside. Okay, so terrain really matters when it comes to the complexity of those things. Also, another thing about terrain is, that aspect of canopy penetration can also really matter. So if you're in a forestry environment or some other place that's really dense, then we're going to need a platform that's got more down thrust to be able to penetrate that canopy. Again, it's all about the right tool for the job. Also, when I think about terrain, I think about access, like in a forestry environment. Another good option. What are there a lot of obstacles that are on the terrain? Right? Are there outbuildings? Are there do I have issues with power lines? Things like that. I'm going to think about all those things. If it's really a congested airspace, I might need to go with a smaller aircraft that's more maneuverable and can do well in that environment. Also, regulations. Now, I'll touch on this real quick. In the US and most countries that have regulations on aircraft, they're going to be split into two different categories. I'm going to say over 55 pounds or over 25 kilos. Okay, that's generally the rule. Certain environments, certain countries might make it a big pain in the butt to go with something that's over 55 pounds or over 25 kilos. If that's the case, you might actually be better served by under 25 pound, under 25 kilo, under 55-pound aircraft and buying two of them. Okay, there's some goods and bads. Our experts will help you out with that, help you make the right choice. Okay. Next thing I want to get into is staging. All right, so how many people are needed? That also can be it is a determined factor when it comes to the size of the aircraft, but also what's your access? Now, this is huge. This is a really big deal. Do you have easy, clean access to that area that you're going to be staging? When I say staging, and this area can move along with your project as your spraying mission progresses throughout the day, your staging area will move. So as you think about this, what's my access on the ground? Do I have a good, clean spot for taking off, landing? What about batteries, recharging, refilling tanks? Do I have, a lot of soil compaction I need to avoid? Am I spraying rights of way under transmission lines? And it's a freaking nightmare out there. What's my access? Now, if your access is limited, then I might suggest a larger aircraft because then you're going to have to land and refill less often. There's all sorts of aspects that go into those things. Again, we'll guide you through that. Charging and refilling is a huge, 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 huge deal. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to do it now. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. We're right here. Okay, this is where products really, really, really vary, and not all drones are created equal. In fact, none of them are created equal. Okay. A lot of brands, all these things are coming from Asia where they're using 240 volts, 220 volts. Okay, their ability to charge batteries faster is way beyond what we can do in the West at 110, 120 volts. Okay, so do read the fine print. When you see a manufacturer advertise, can charge this battery in 10 minutes, look at the fine print. Does it say 220 or 240? Probably so. Then you run into problems with overheating batteries. If you're charging and discharging and charging and discharging, batteries will overheat. You can look out on forums and see a lot of complaints, a lot of concerns, and a lot of slowdown. Now, again, we're talking about productivity. That means that our bottleneck is always at the time on the ground. So we want to shorten that as much as possible. Now, if you've got a large project or high application rates or a large field size, or however you want to say that, then time on the ground is going to be very, very impactful. Okay, if you've got a small plot or you're spot spraying, or have lower application rates, you're going to be on the ground less often. That's not as big of a factor. So the scale of importance there will really change. Now, refilling is a big deal. So, and we go through a lot of this in our training too, but refilling is going to really vary on aircraft based on tank size. Okay, so, and not only tank size, but are the tanks quickly removable? And when I mean quickly removable, I mean unplugging a wire, pulling the tank out, having one that's already refilled, dropping that in, plugging it in, and you're going. Even different models will have things like the model I showed you a moment ago in that video has a house battery or an accessory battery that actually keeps the avionics and the flight controllers powered on when you swap batteries, so that when you get your new battery in, your aircraft is already linked, already paired, already connected to the ground station, has all of its flight plans all still online. You literally hit go and it's off again. Where most other systems, you have to reconnect and repair all that stuff. Yeah, does it take a lot of time? No, maybe 60 seconds or so. But our job, our target when our services team are out is they want to be on the ground and back up in the air in 90 seconds or less. And it's totally doable if you got the right tool for the job. Okay. That's charging and refilling. This also matters where you are in the country and what's your climate like. In Florida, where our company is, we're dealing with crazy heat all summer long. And I mean, it's hot. We'll have lots of days, weeks and weeks and weeks where it's over 100 degrees, tons of humidity, and we'll be out spraying all day long. Now, I couldn't do that with every product line that we sell because the batteries would overheat. So then what do I have to do? I've got to buy way more batteries. At $1,000, $2,000 a pop, that gets expensive. So the product line that we use most often at our Florida jobs or wherever we're doing that's really hot is this product line called XAG that has built-in battery cooling systems. They're really, really, really fabulous and allows us to fly back to back to back to back without an excessive amount of batteries. More to come whenever you talk to one of our experts on that, okay? Now, we've talked about where's the application. Now we're moving into achieving the application. Again, at the end of the day, look, who cares how cool the drone is if you aren't efficacious in your job or your application? So now we talk about, are your capacities, your tank size, and your flow rates, pump and nozzles, a match for the application rate and target? Okay, so can you achieve, with these fine nozzles, can you achieve the volume? How slow do you have to fly if you're putting 20, 30, 40 gallons out per acre on a fungicide or an insecticide application? Again, we're going to follow the law. We're going to follow the label. And again, and I know I said 10, 20, 30, 40, but on that aerial label and fungicides, you're looking at 5-ish, 10-ish gallons per acre of total solution. Point is, you've got to make sure that your nozzles and your flow rates at your pump match that. One thing that you'll see coming out, and you'll see this expanding greatly soon, are rotary atomization and peristaltic pumps. That gives us the ability on certain aircraft. Now, again, this might be overkill if you don't need it, but if your particular job requires a high flow rate with a fine droplet on a pressure-based or hydraulic-based nozzle, like a diaphragm pump, it requires that it's going to slow down your flow. I go to a rotary atomization nozzle. My actual rotary atomizer can spin as fast as I need it to, and I can keep a high flow rate. So I'm able to achieve those targets. Again, talk to us. I don't want to get too much more into that. Okay, next thing is the system capable of operating where you need it. We talked earlier about rough terrain, a lot of obstacles in the area. Different aircraft have different features and benefits when it comes to terrain following, obstacle avoidance, swarming, etc. And then we talked already about how fast can you recharge batteries and how critical is that? And then what about tank swapping and tethers? Okay, other considerations, maintenance, parts, and support. This is huge. Look, you want to be set up for success, okay? Our experts are going to tell you you've got to have spare parts and you've got to take training. Those are the number one and number two things that are going to go into you being effective, hit the ground running as soon as you get this thing home. Okay, that's a big, big, big deal. And then you want a company that's going to answer the phones. One of the things I'm really proud of with our team is that we are the interface for the customer. Our customers, no matter which product line you buy or which model or whatever, our customers never interact with our manufacturers. We don't ever want you to have to deal with that. We don't want you to deal with time change, language, translation issues. Anytime you've got any question, no matter how simple or how complex, you come to us. Okay, we are the face of all of our manufacturers, and our manufacturers also love that. We've been doing this for a long time, been in business since 2009, and we really are experts when it comes to being able to make sure that you have what you need. Also, we talk about things like growing your fleet. Is that a fleet that's expandable? And if so, how well do other added aircraft or ground vehicles play together in that same ecosystem? We talk about expanding your uses. Now, look, I'm a big fan. Get out and achieve the job that you've got right in front of you. Great. But I also like to think about, okay, how can you make the most of that tool in the future? Is it spot spraying? Is it mapping? Is it crop health analytics? Is it crop counting? Do you want to, at some point later, have the option to do dry fertilizers or seed spreading? If you're a services business, this is a huge question that's critical, and you've got to think about it. Not all aircraft have all of that expandability or adaptability. It's a big part of it. Then familiarity with UI. Frankly, I think this is the least important of concerns. Maybe you've got a Mavic or a Phantom that you love the operating system, you're used to, you're familiar with it. Cool, all good. But I wouldn't have that be your big determining factor of buying a DJI spraying drone versus another product. Okay. Last thing, why should you buy from us? Well, I'm a little biased. Yeah, of course, right? But we're proudly 100% US based sales and support. And look, if we're really picky on the companies that we sell, the manufacturers that we sell. If we can't guarantee it, we won't sell it. In other words, if we have concerns about the reliability, the usability, the efficacy, the support, anything like that, we just won't sell it. Okay. Again, established in 2009, we've been selling spraying drones in the United States since 2014-15. So we really are experts. I don't think anyone else has been doing it as long as us, but I don't know if that's totally true. Full service, we've got you covered. FAA consulting and guidance, so we help people get their FAA approvals. Leasing and financing, all on our website. Training, we've got a super comprehensive training program. Spraying services for hire, as I mentioned. Drone protection plans. So again, shop the best brands with us, unbiased advice, and when you call us, we answer the phone. So thanks again for checking this out. I hope this was really valuable and helps your wheels start turning in ways you might not have thought of yet, and all the different factors and aspects that go into buying the best drone for the job. Thanks again. I'm Brian Sanders, president of HSC, and give us a call if you have any questions. Chat with us on our website. Follow us on social media. We're always posting really fun stuff there, and make sure you check out our other videos on YouTube. Thanks again. We'll see you on the flip side.